Every CEO's journey has its Everest. The moments when the path forward feels steep, uncertain, and alone. With Sherpa CEO coaching, you don't climb alone. Our experienced coaches are your guides, helping you break through barriers, sharpen your strategy, strengthen your leadership, and build a team that can carry you higher. With tailored one-on-one coaching, strategic planning, and real accountability, your summit is within reach. Sherpa CEO Coaching, your guide to confidence, clarity, and extraordinary business growth. Get coached and learn more at sherpaceo.com.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, and I have with me this morning special guest, Jamie Thomas, founder and president of Paradise Jets. Jamie, good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. So Paradise Jets, where are you located at?
Our offices are in Scottsdale. We're based obviously in Arizona, and we've got airplanes all across the country.
Wow, that's pretty exciting. So I got to know, what gets you into the jet business?
So I guess a few factors. One, childhood dream. So I was that young man, actually as little as I can remember. I've just always been enamored and goo goo gaga over airplanes and jets. My mom and dad put themselves through college working at the airport, and they got to know each other by working at the airport. And so through that experience, once I popped out and they had me, it wasn't uncommon for my dad to take me out to the airport and to see airplanes, and it just frankly has been in my blood ever since. So as far back as I can remember, and if you remember, as we were growing up, we didn't have all these cell phones and camcorders. Everybody kind of did these audio recordings, and my parents have audio recordings of me as a 2-year-old and 3-year-old just talking, speaking about airplanes and wanting to go to the airport. So it truly has been a lifelong endeavor for me. And frankly, I think it was my fate to be involved in aviation.
Wow, that's amazing. So you were born with wings.
Sort of. Yeah, I'm not an angel, but yeah, I was born with wings.
That's very cool. So
yeah.
I think it was 1986 or so, right around there, Top Gun comes out with Tom Cruise, man. And, if that doesn't make you love airplanes, I don't know, as a kid growing up, that was a lot of fun to see that. So I love that. So you grow up, your parents are working in the airport growing up, and you're seeing planes, and it becomes a part of your DNA. And then you're about to go to college for music, right? And then you make a change. What happened there?
So, we grew up very middle class. Certainly can't say that we were poor. We also were not rich. So at the time, I was trying to figure out how to make aviation part of my life. I was very gifted musically. And so I thought initially that I would go off to Hollywood and write soundtracks. Very, very gifted in music composition. Lots of professors and people behind me supporting me, thinking that would be the way that I could fund my aviation habit. But I got a call in my dorm room to where back home a local college was starting an aviation program. And everybody thought that, if I moved back home, lived with my parents, got a full-time job, that I could possibly afford to pursue an aviation career. And so I still love music, but the closer, just for my own personality, that life, living in the music world, I got burned out on it. And
Mm.
I just thought the more I prayed about it, the more I thought about it, I thought maybe this was God opening a door to really to be able to pursue what I think I was destined to do. And so, with a lot of thought and prayer, I decided I'm going to go ahead and take this leap of faith and I'm going to do what no 19 or 20-year-old wants to do and move back in with mom and dad. I got a full-time job working out at the airport, and I was the guinea pig for this local college to become their first aviation student and helped build the entire program. And frankly, I took that leap of faith and
Wow.
have never looked back. It's been quite a journey.
That's incredible. And what I did maybe I missed it. What city was this
Yeah, I
in?
grew up in Dayton, Ohio. So
Okay.
actually, well, depending on how well you know your geography, sometimes I just tell people I grew up north of Cincinnati because they have no idea where Dayton is. But there's a few small towns in between Dayton and Cincinnati. So Dayton is known for the Wright brothers, birthplace of aviation. So we've got that
Mhm.
going for me. And yeah, so I grew up in Ohio. I'm a Midwesterner. And ended up graduating from Wright State University. So Wright State, Wright Brothers, spelled the same way. And I worked out at Dayton International Airport. That's how I funded everything. Lived with mom and dad, and then did flight training full time. Ended up earning 2 degrees, one in airway science and a management degree with a focus on leadership. I love
Wow.
the study of leadership.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
that's incredible. I love the beginning. So you get out of college, you've got these degrees, you're ready to go. What does job one out the door look like?
Job one was working as a flight instructor, so teaching other people to fly. And part of my dream when I when I left the music career path and decided to choose aviation, I guess a part that we've kind of left out is that even as a small child, I've been very entrepreneurial. I had a lawn mowing business. I had printed out of the newspaper, and keep in mind, I'm like 11 or 12 years old at this point in time. The newspaper had an article about how important it was for homes to have their address on the curbside, so that if you had an emergency, the police or the fire department, assuming your house wasn't just totally ablaze, could find you. And so I took that newspaper article, clipped it out, I went door to door, and for $5, I would spray paint your address on the side of the curb. So between my lawn mowing business, I had a lawnmower repair business. I had the spray paint your address on the side of the curb business, all when I was, very early teens. And so my goal in life, other than to just also to be in aviation, but also this serial entrepreneur side of me, was just always very present. And I thought utopia would be to eventually become an airline pilot and to own my own chain of what we call FBOs. Now, that's a technical term in aviation, and FBO, it's a silly acronym. It stands for fixed base operator, but what that actually is, if you can imagine a marina for where boats go, an FBO is like a marina for private jets.
Okay.
Um, that's where it's got the executive terminal and airplanes get fueled and all that type of thing. So here I am, basically a young man thinking that I'm on my way to the airlines. Job number one is to be a flight instructor, and I'm thinking that I'm going to earn my hours that way and then eventually make it to the airlines. And while I'm an airline pilot, I'm also going to somehow get funded to start a whole chain of FBOs across the country. And
Mm.
that was the initial goal.
And so did that goal happen, or did things come in that changed the path?
What is it Mike Tyson says? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
That's
Um,
what he says.
Yeah, so that was my plan. I never really got punched in the face, But what happened was, um, I just had a knack for the business side of aviation. And so a lot of as working as a flight instructor, you've got various students. And some students were like me, where they wanted to be on an airline path. Another half of my students were local businessmen that wanted to become pilots so they could fly their own airplane. And what would happen is these local businessmen would start asking me questions about what airplane should I buy, and how what are the trade-offs and benefits for buying this particular airplane, and what kind of ratings do I need in order to be able to fly it. And so here I am in my really early 20s talking to really sophisticated business guys that are trying to figure out how to use private aviation to grow their business, grow their wealth, improve their lives. And what ended up happening was that a lot of those, I'll call them students, became my first clients for helping them to transact on airplanes. And
Okay.
so I would then help them figure out what was best for them. And then ultimately I'd go out and I would acquire it for them and help them. I would do the transaction, and then I'd help them. It's called transition into that particular aircraft. And so um, that was really my start into the business
Wow.
aviation arena. Um, and then I got to know very, very affluent business people in the Dayton and Cincinnati area. And like anything, small single engine piston aircraft eventually turned into large multi-engine jet aircraft that I'm helping people buy and acquire. Eventually, I get hired by one of Dayton's most wealthy entrepreneurs, and I end up working for them for about 7 years. And with their blessing, I had my own business on the side, and I was helping them grow their flight department. And I basically did the traditional entrepreneur thing where I really went out and completely learned the trade. And then eventually around 2008, I went out completely on my own and was helping people operate, buy and sell, create strategies for how to make smart private aviation decisions. And we've really, frankly, never looked back.
Okay. So you're like, you're getting this thing started out, and you're a flight school instructor, and I'm just going to call it, for lack of a better term, brokerage. I mean, you start kind of almost like brokering deals, just kind of falls in your lap because of the people that you're meeting with. Like, they're buying airplanes, they want to know more about airplanes, and you're helping them put together deals, and then you're making a percentage or a fee or something like that on top of that. Is that basically what's going on?
Yeah, I don't, yes, that's what's going on. I don't like to use the word broker because one of the, I guess, key principles of how I do business is that I want to be on the same side of the table with my client. And broker implies that I'm somewhere in the middle and negotiating for both sides, when really I'm more of an advisor or a guide. And I know maybe that's just semantics, but it's more accurate to say that I'm hired as a subject matter expert to, yes, to help facilitate the transaction, but ultimately I don't act as a broker in the traditional sense. I act more as the way an attorney, a CPA, a wealth manager would on your side of the table. I'm there to negotiate and to look out for your best interests.
Oh, I love that. And I would agree. That's not a broker. That's you're a partner. You're my partner. I'm coming alongside you. We're partnering in this. We're going through this thing shoulder and shoulder. And you're saying, hey man, this isn't the right plane, or let's get a better deal, or we can get them down here, or
Correct.
these terms are best. So you're really looking out for my best interest as I'm walking through this complex decision that I probably just have a dream of. I want to buy a plane and fly it. and you're helping me come in and make sure that I don't stumble in a pothole and break a leg, right? That's
Right.
basically what we're doing here.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, so you're working for the private family for 7 years.
Yep.
You complete that, and then you say, "I'm going out on my own."
Yep.
And when you go out on your own and you take that leap, I mean, it's always been in your blood. I love the story about, doing the doing the stencils on the sidewalks,
Yeah.
as a kid for five
Yeah.
bucks. I mean, that's incredible. So you've had this dream, and you say, "Hey, man, I'm taking the leap." And was the name of the company Paradise Jets in '08 when you made the leap? No.
No,
Okay,
no, no.
so
We've had multiple iterations. We've started and continue to operate multiple aviation companies. Paradise Jets, we didn't really start until the 2017, 2018 period. I think we incorporated it in 2016. But no, we started with a company called Max Flight, got it its own charter certificate, really grew that up, ended up moving to Texas, had a lot of chapters throughout that whole period. Saw in it, I guess, an opportunity for Paradise. That what Paradise is, it's a little bit hard to explain. It's got two distinct halves to it, and on one half, it is everything that we've been talking about me personally. So this whole idea of being an advocate, being a guide, the way we brand that side of it is that we are actually building aviation strategies for customers. And I don't want to overuse the word strategy because if I'm not careful, every other word that we're going to talk about is going to say strategy. But what the issue is this. The private aviation space is by definition an inefficient marketplace. What that means is that it's not transparent at all. If you want comps for what an airplane is worth, they don't exist. There is no MLS like in real estate. So it's an inefficient marketplace. It has completely unique, complex trade-offs on every decision that you make. And then it's very emotionally charged. I don't know why it's like this, but the emotion and how seductive private aviations are. I've watched extremely wealthy people make decisions in private aviation that they would never make anywhere else in their life. And so you've got this inefficient marketplace with highly complex trade-offs, emotionally charged. You are in one of the most unique situations to make a bad decision. And so the first half of what Paradise is really kind of me, Jamie Thomas. It is almost what I get the most excited about, and it is to build out a plan and to help customers navigate that inefficient marketplace, all those trade-offs, and that emotionally charged situation that we find ourselves in. And so that is where we ultimately build the strategy and we guide them through all of those elements. The other half of Paradise is kind of like every other aviation business that you'll see or that we started in the past, where now we're actual operating experts. So the other half is in some ways almost like a blue collar side of it. And that's a little bit of a half truth, but that is where we have taken our 26 years of operating airplanes and know how to operate them at the highest level possible. So you combine this idea of building a strategy and a plan and then actually being able to implement it. One of the pieces of feedback we hear from customers all the time is that, the problem with hiring consultants is they just kind of take whatever it is you've told them, mix it up a little bit, and hand it back to you. And they don't really have the ability then to fulfill their recommendations. And so we solve that problem. We can actually go in, build the plan, guide you through all the booby traps, help you define and arrive at the outcome you actually want. Then we can hand that plan over to our operational side and actually fulfill it. So it is, if you think about it as a life cycle of decisions, we can take you from soup to nuts.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Okay. So if I got this right,
Yeah.
I am not calling Paradise Jets and saying, "Hey, I need to charter a plane from uh, Scottsdale to San Francisco."
You can, and we won't turn our nose up to you, but at some point in time, we may ask you, why are you doing this? Like, what is it you're actually
Okay.
trying to do? And is there a better way to do this for you? If you're not interested in having that conversation, we won't be obnoxious about it. If you're like, no, I just need a charter to go from here to there. Okay, that's fine. We do that as well, if not better than most other people. But our secret sauce, if you want to think of it that way, is understanding why it is that you're trying to, what it is you're trying to do, and why do you think charter is the best thing for you. And what, not to get ahead of myself too much, but the where the light bulb goes off for most people is that there's almost this concept of like portfolio flying. And what I mean by portfolio flying is that in some cases, chartering an airplane probably is the right answer. In other cases, you may want to own a piece of an airplane. You may also need to own a fraction of an airplane. And so the most discerning clients eventually realize that all the methods out there to fly privately, you don't have to lock yourself into one specific solution. And that more than likely, not in every case, but in most cases, you need a portfolio of methods and you need to optimize what trips you use which method for.
Okay. So if
Sorry,
I
lot
break
to
that
unpack
down,
there.
no,
Lot
no,
to
no. I
unpack.
love it. You are
Yeah.
a smart guy. I'm so
Ah,
glad you're on the show. Um, Look at so there's some options that I have when I'm looking at the charter, and those would be I can own a plane, I can own a portion of a plane or a piece of a plane, I can own a fraction of a plane, and I can or I can take a charter. And each one of those has a different impact on how I live my life, how I transact business. So my question,
risk consequences, tax consequences, liability consequences. Each one of those methods have different sets of, again, I don't want to overuse the word, but trade-offs.
okay, so can you walk me through the whys behind those four options?
I, I can generalize them.
Yeah, generalize. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we'd be here for a week.
yeah, no. So yeah, in any of these decisions, one of the things we've identified, we're getting ready to launch a new website. We talk about it on there is that there's over 250 trade-offs anytime you're going to make a private aviation decision. You may not be aware of all of them, but you are consciously or subconsciously making at least 250 different decisions when you choose one of these methods. Um, to to help you kind of walk through this, let me draw a little bit of an analogy here. Um, Again, private aviation being inefficient and something of a mystery to people. This concept is not foreign when you travel. When you think about, okay, I'm going to go somewhere. How am I going to stay there? Am I going to stay with a family or friend? Am I going to get a hotel room? Am I going to get an Airbnb? Am I going to go to a resort? All of those things, because of how most people's lives are, you automatically understand the trade-offs for those various things. If you're wanting a certain type of experience, you're going to go to the resort. If you're spending one night in Atlanta, you're probably not going to go get an Airbnb or rent some type of luxury home. You're probably going to stay in a hotel. So being inside the industry, the whole idea of charter or fractional or co-ownership or owning your own airplane or leasing, those of us who've been around this space, it's pretty obvious what you need to do in what set of circumstances. But to the person who's new at it or frankly never studied it, it's not always obvious. So now to answer your question, kind of using that analogy as a backdrop, the
Mhm.
the there are two major issues that you have to answer before you can decide on what method. And it goes with this backdrop. The IRS and the FAA do not agree on how an airplane should be owned and operated. Okay. That is the fundamental problem with all of private aviation, is that, are you going to try and satisfy the IRS, the FAA? Or are you going to hire somebody like us with a team of people to help you understand, the various trade-offs for those two government agencies? So the very first thing we have to figure out is, are you going to put capital into your private flying, or are you not? And my own personal belief and the way I coach all of our clients is, you should never put, well, there's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, you should never put more capital into private aviation than what you can write off with the IRS. So if you've got a $3 million tax bill, you shouldn't put more than $3 million into private aviation. We've got clients who have 10, 20, 30, $40 million tax problems, and they want to offset that by flying privately. So the very first step is figuring out, how much capital can I put into this? And then a very quick second half to the capital equation is, when you put capital into the activity, it should be more than just for the purchase to offset your tax bill. The capital going in should, but doesn't always, but should also lower the operating cost for whatever method you've chosen. And so I'm really not trying to overcomplicate this, but the reason that I just can't give you like super generalized terms is that every situation has to be customized to those principles. How are we going to satisfy the FAA and the IRS? How much capital can you put in? How much depreciation do you need? And the capital that you're putting in, are we doing it in a way that also lowers your operating cost? And so I can't draw it out, but if you kind of think of it as a graph, we got all these lines that are going to cross, and where the most of those lines intersect is how we start building out your portfolio for what you should or should not be doing. But I can make it a real simple equation that if you have no need for depreciation, or you don't have a lot of capital, you're not liquid, then all the various ownership models are basically off the table, and you need to be in some type of charter or lease program, because the capital play doesn't make any sense.
Okay. So I love how that whole thing came back to the government, and red tape is what I'm going to call it. The whole thing came back to, am I satisfying the IRS or the FAA? And I love how you broke that down, because you really made what is probably very complex and many years of studying and working and learning down to, if I owe $3 million, I can put $3 million in. Don't put more in than that. And we're going to shake out a plan and a strategy that works from there. But here's some basic rules of the road. Here's some guardrails. Don't drive off a cliff. We're going to follow these paths, and we're going to help you design this customized program that basically offsets where you're at, because some people have 10, 20 million in write-off.
Yes, and let me, like, the idea of putting capital in for a tax write-off, pretty much everybody gets. I think what really makes a lot of our strategies unique is that we don't stop there. We're also wanting to apply the capital in a method that lowers your operating cost. So, I mean, if you got a $20 million tax problem, and I'm generalizing this, but you can go buy a $20 million brand new aircraft, and as long as it's all structured correctly, and disclaimer, I'm not giving tax advice, but you can write it off. The question is, did that $20 million also buy you operational efficiency? And a lot of people completely ignore or don't even think about that part. And so my point is that if I've got $20 million to deploy in capital, then I also want to make sure that it's done in a way that reduces your operating costs. And not to make this overly complex, but that's a real trick to do. It's not always possible, by the way, but it's an exercise that we go through, but it is more possible than people realize.
Okay, that's amazing. So I get what you guys do. You guys are in a serious business of really helping people navigate more than just aviation. There's also a very large financial component to what you guys do.
That's that first half that I'm talking about over inside of Paradise Jets, is that when I use the word strategy, this is what I'm talking about. By the way, you really need to know, and your audience needs to know, this is not all coming from Jamie. And I would buyer beware. If you're working with one person and you think one person is going to be able to navigate all the things we've been talking about, it's a huge red flag. It is not just, I quarterback a lot of it, but it is a team that we have assembled of tax professionals, aviation professionals, wealth managers to help customers navigate all of those areas of discipline. But it is not, well, I shouldn't say it's not possible. I guess anything's technically possible, but it's highly, highly unlikely that one person can navigate all of those various things.
Okay, I understand. So there's this idea, this perception, this, reputation about, private aviation being all about luxury and status. And it seems like you're looking at it through a different lens. Where has that philosophy evolved over the years? Because when I think of private jets, like, I honestly think of people like Floyd Mayweather with Mayweather on the side, or Donald Trump with Trump on the side, or Jake Paul. I mean, the people that I think about private aviation, those are the things that you see flashing across social media. So that's what I think of when I look at it. I
Yeah.
am now desperately wrong in my 30-minute lesson with Jamie Thomas, but how did this evolve from luxury to, I'm going to call it, practical business management of aviation? That's probably off, but that's what I'm breaking it down to in my simple dinosaur brain.
Yeah. So there's kind of a lot to unpack there. I don't have a statistic off the top of my head, and I apologize for that, but I will just say the majority of private aviation users are small business owners. They're the folks that have multiple factories throughout the Midwest, multiple car dealerships, people that actually need to travel. And while, the idea of the amount of luxury that's involved with private jets, I'm not denying the fact that it is there. It is an awesome, luxurious way to travel. But just the same way you can use your computer as a business tool, but then you can also game on it. Part of private jets are kind of like that, where yes, there is an element of, it can be used as a flying yacht. They do get used as flying yachts, but they also become time machines for the entrepreneur that can't visit 5 factories in one day with the airlines. And then the family element too, which, it's hard to put a price on, but how do I take 3 meetings in 3 different cities and still make it home for my kid's recital? And so how do you put a value on that? And there's something of a misconception that the public has, that we as an industry, as a private jet industry, really need to do a better job of explaining that it is true that sometimes the CEO, the CFO, upper management will use the aircraft, to go take a private vacation, a personal trip on. But when we unpack that, the idea that, okay, it's true, I'm gonna take the jet and I'm gonna go on vacation with it, but I also was working right up into the very moment that I got on the airplane, or I was working on the airplane the entire way to that vacation. And if something happens with our business while I'm on vacation, I'm going to jump on that aircraft and go back to the office or back to the factory, or back to the dealership to rectify it, and then go back to vacation. So, I mean, while it is true that there is this luxury element to it, really at the end of the day, if it's used correctly, it's a time machine, and it's giving you back as much time in your life that you possibly can. Can it be abused? Of course. just like you can abuse your computer and not work on it and play a bunch of games or do a bunch of inappropriate things with it. But at the end of the day, the jet should be and can be used as a business tool. And to an outside third party observer, it could look like abuse, but in my experience, most of the time it's not. There's certain examples of abuse, but the majority of the time, it's being used as a tool to to increase time and efficiency and quality of life.
I love it. That's a fantastic answer. You know, every entrepreneur goes through, a defining moment in their business. Was there a defining moment, a hard moment in building Paradise Jets where you wondered whether this thing was going to work or not?
um, I think the closest thing to that is you think about all these trade-offs and requirements that customers have, and we're always building these customized strategies. And you have enough of those conversations, you start to see the common threads in most people's lives. And so we launched a fractional program, being where you own a piece of an airplane rather than owning your entire rather than owning the entire jet on your own. And we're pretty proud of our fractional program because it infuses so many of the common trade-offs that people are looking for. But when we launched that, I guess about 4 years ago now, and we weren't really sure if it was going to work or if people were really going to understand what we had built. Because in a lot of ways, if you look at all the problems in the industry, there are common hurdles that you have to get through. Back to the number one that we were talking about, that the IRS and the FAA don't agree on how an airplane should be owned and operated. And we have elegantly solved a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of those issues in our fractional program. And we really kind of put all of our chips on, will this fractional program work or not? To our delight, it's been received very well. Part of doing things like this, though, is to continue to get the word out. I don't want to give everybody the impression that it's the solution to everything, but for the majority of people, it is. It solves a lot of the common issues and trade-offs that most people are challenged and faced with. So yeah, our fractional program really was a major fork in the road for us to figure out, how will this product be received? And thankfully, it's been received really, really well.
That's fantastic. If you could sit down with Jamie at the very beginning of this journey for 10 minutes, sit down in the office, have a cup of coffee, what would you tell him now, 26 years later?
Um, I don't know that I would tell myself anything, and I don't mean to
Okay.
be weird about it, but I rarely make the same mistake twice, but I learn a lot from all the scars and bruises that I have of being a serial entrepreneur. And so I don't know that I would know and understand what I know today had I not gone through those trials. Um, so I don't know that I would tell myself much of anything other than don't give up and it's going to be okay. Um, and that God's got a plan, and to try and take every challenge, every trial, and figure out what is it that I'm supposed to learn from it and to move forward that way.
That's great advice. Now, in the beginning of this show, you mentioned that you were thinking about making this decision to go from music to aviation, and you said you put a lot of thought and a lot of prayer into it. And then you just now mentioned that God's got a plan. So I'm guessing that on your entrepreneurial journey, faith has been very important to you as you've walked through life, as you've walked through marriage, as you've walked through business. What how do you manage that? How do you manage a business with faith, and what does that mean to you? Is that I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Um, would you accept an answer if I said I'm still figuring that out? I don't, I, I don't know. A lot of the vendors that we work with are also people of faith, and we kind of have an ongoing dialogue about how much faith should be part of the business side and how much we should talk about it and not. Um, it's just part of who I am. And so I can't um, I can't deny nor will I excuse the idea or concept that faith is a huge part of who I am. And if if you're a believer or non-believer, if you listen to every successful entrepreneur, and when they're being honest, there was a healthy amount of belief that went into what they did. And so all of entrepreneurship has some level of belief. Now, where you put that belief, that's on you. Um, I'd recommend the Christian faith, but no matter where you're putting it, you have to believe in something. I don't, I personally don't believe that any entrepreneur who has become successful in both business and in life um, doesn't have some type of deep-rooted faith. Stephen Covey talks about that. That one of I think it's in Seven Habits that he talks about it. But you you have to have um, some type of belief system and some type of faith in something. Otherwise, my guess is you're just going to give up. And
Mhm.
um, and so, how much should I talk about it? How much in the forefront on the business side should it be there? I don't know. I'm still figuring all that out. Um, on a personal level, it's highly present. On a private level, it's highly present. Um, I wouldn't know how to operate or to live my life without it.
I love that. I believe the same thing. In my 25 years on this entrepreneurial journey, the number one most important thing day in and day out is, in my opinion, faith in God. That's it, right? That's I'm going to give thanks through the good and through the bad, and, the ups and the downs and the ins and the betweens. And so, I love that you talk about it. I love that you share it. I think that it's outstanding, and all the glory to God. That's how I believe. And I'm glad that you shared that, and I think it's good. And I think that every entrepreneur does have to have something to believe in. There's got to be something there, because it is a hard journey. It is not all sunshine and roses. It'll knock you to your knees more times you can think. But that's a whole different show that could take a whole different set of time frames. But
Yeah,
as we bring this in for a close, I guess, I would just ask one, how can people find you? Are you on social media? Are you on LinkedIn or
yeah,
Facebook or anything like
yeah,
that?
I'm very active on X, on Instagram. You can find us just on the World Wide Web and go to paradisejets.com. We're on YouTube, all the social media platforms. We're out there. Um, Um, so yeah, I would encourage anybody who's interested in flying private or learning how to get more of their time back by utilizing private aviation, that it is most likely more affordable and more accessible than they realize. The point is, though, is that not to become emotional about the airplanes, but to think about the structure first.
Mm.
And that's where our whole strategy and plan will come in. It's about the structure and looking at it more from a wealth perspective, from a financial planning perspective, than from an asset purchase perspective.
I love that. I think that's great advice. I have one final question for you. My favorite question of the show. I've got a large billboard, whiteboard on the side of the road. You can write one sentence, one phrase, one word. What do you want to share with the world today?
Don't give up.
Don't give up. I love that one. You know what? That's an important thing. Jamie, thank you so much. This
Thanks,
has
Dave.
been the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. We are back 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every single Tuesday. If you like this show, give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments into the comment box, and check out this incredible company, Paradise Jets. Get your time back, get your business back. This is absolutely incredible stuff that you've shared today. I mean, absolutely incredible stuff. I've just been honored to have you on the show, and I've learned so much from you. So thank you so much, Jamie, and good luck in everything that you put your hands to.
Thank you, Dave.
Every CEO's journey has its Everest. The moments when the path forward feels steep, uncertain, and alone. With Sherpa CEO coaching, you don't climb alone. Our experienced coaches are your guides, helping you break through barriers, sharpen your strategy, strengthen your leadership, and build a team that can carry you higher. With tailored one-on-one coaching, strategic planning, and real accountability, your summit is within reach. Sherpa CEO Coaching, your guide to confidence, clarity, and extraordinary business growth. Get coached and learn more at sherpaceo.com.